Hello and welcome to From Our Perspective to Therapist Moms and a Mic. I'm Claudia Glassman.
And I am Katie Truax. And today we are with a guest speaker or guest, I don't know, joiner, whatever you call it, a guest
A
conversation.
guest, period.
Yes. Who is a friend and colleague of mine here in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida, on the Panhandle, Amy Cooper. So, Amy, would you introduce yourself? You can do it however you want to. Introduce kind of who you are personally and professionally.
Okay. So thank you for asking me to be on your podcast. First of all, I'm a very grateful mother. I have two daughters that are adults now. They're adult. So that transition of being hovering to letting go has been a transition. I guess for me, my identity, I am a woman in recovery, very grateful for that. I'm also decided when I got sober that I wanted to make a difference. So I went back to school, got my counseling degree, and I am a board certified addiction counselor. I also deal with certifications in recovery coaching. I deal with food, I deal with sex, I deal with gambling. I also do family systems that surrounds loved ones who struggle with addiction, whether it be alcoholism, whether it be drug addiction. So bringing back the family is very important because I believe, I don't want to say part of the problem, but I want families to switch to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
And then also I do mental health and addiction, whether it be process addictions, behavioral addictions, or actually physical addictions, your drug addictions, interventions. So, but first and foremost, I'm a very grateful recovering mom from substance abuse, alcohol, cocaine, had men and everything else. How about that? The whole shebang. Anything I could get my hands on it, unfortunately, in the latter part of my addiction, the disease. So I'm very grateful. I'm grateful I get to be a mom and be present in my girls' lives.
Absolutely.
I love that. And Amy, how long have you been in recovery and doing the work that you're doing, helping other people?
I am celebrating March of 2023. I'm celebrating 13 years of recovery. And I've been doing working with others right at 9 years.
I love it. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And I always love to hear you talk about everything that you work with, because I feel like even though we work out of the same office, like I forget sometimes how extensive the scope of what you do is. So I always love to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, I think something for coming up for 2023 is a piece that had the opportunity to write almost 2 years ago. It's legal support while you're pursuing your recovery. And I finished up my undergraduate in criminal justice and now did a lot of work. So it's criminal justice addiction counseling. So where I can come in and work with those who are repeat DUI offenders. They've gotten charges for drug paraphernalia, right? Because drugs and alcohol are always just a symptom of what's really going on. And especially those who are just repetitive in the courts, they've never addressed the true underlying issues. So I'm really excited about that piece that I'm able to offer coming up too. So
yeah, that's really cool. That seems like a real niche that is probably in a lot of demand.
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So here we are. We're recording this. Today is December 21st. So we are in the thick of Christmas, Hanukkah season, and this is a time where I feel like addiction is a very present issue. There's so much happening around this time of year, right? People are facing financial issues in a very real and salient way. People are preparing for or are already interacting with family that maybe sometimes those interactions might not be easy or healthy. People are just dealing with a lot of stress, regardless of anything else. You know, you take a normal stressful life, right? Like, let's imagine that one is a mother, right? Because we all are, and are maybe works outside of the home as well, like the three of us do. And then you layer on top, like, oh, I have to bake Christmas cookies, and I have to shop for presents, and I have to ship things, and I have to mail things, and I have to do things like make sure Santa's been contacted and that the elves are okay and that travel plans are arranged. And I mean, it can push anybody kind of over the edge. And not only that, but people are getting together in gatherings. I mean, I've had two clients this season kind of face up to mental health clients, people who have come to me for things totally unrelated to substance use, but kind of chewing on the idea of maybe I have a problem. Christmas is a season of partying, right? And gatherings and drinking and festivities and specialty cocktails and so there's so much I feel like right now that is ripe to be a trigger for people who either have normative drinking to take things over the edge, or I guess any substance use too, or people who don't have normative drinking, right? And where it's kind of there's a big light being shown on that, both for oneself and then perhaps kind of as we interact with extended family, colleagues, coworkers at Christmas parties, and so forth and so on. So, Amy, like, what do you see around this time of year? Is there an uptick from your perspective in people who either like have struggles with substance use or at the very least kind of facing that this time of year? Or maybe do things just get really bad and then they start facing things after the first of the year? Well, what's your experience?
Yeah, no, I see a rush of, oh my God, there's something wrong. The holidays are here. There's something wrong. Something wrong's already been wrong. So, our mental health is exacerbated by stress, especially when it's untreated. Addiction and alcoholism are part of mental health.
Mhm.
And so when we already are using, or more so not just using, but abusing substances, right? Or turning to them to self medicate. Oh my God, my kids are coming home from college and it's going to be a crapshoot. So let me just order 2 cases of wine instead of one. Because a lot of, addiction falls into the fact that we emotionally numb because we don't want to feel. Holidays also are stressful because maybe we've lost a loved one this year. And how do we cope? And normal coping skills, for normal people, as people in recovery say, normies, which I don't understand that because I don't think anybody's normal. That's just a setting on the dryer. So for me, I see it definitely, it's exacerbated. I mean, they're like, I don't even know what I'm going to do, or they've already said, okay, it rises and then it drops. And then the first of the year, whoever made a mess of the holidays, either their families are calling me or they're calling me because their families are like so mad at them. Or, the client is saying, hey, listen, or, I have found too that people stop coming in at Thanksgiving and then all of a sudden at January, they're like, when can I see you? Because they give themselves permission to take a break. And unfortunately, when they take that break, every time we go back out, and it gets harder on our bodies, right? Not just our mental health, but it's physically harming to us because, we stay sober and then we give ourselves permission because of the holidays, because that's our only coping mechanism to deal with dysfunctional families, right? Or to deal with stress or to deal with, unresolved emotional pain. And so we give ourselves permission that it's okay. And then, the holidays are over and then it's even worse coming, trying to get back up because every time we relapse, it's harder to come back.
Mhm.
And it's just harder on our bodies. So I think, especially now it's the holidays, those who are struggling, there's a lot of resources out there that are free. There's AA, there's NA, right? There's also Celebrate Recovery, which is a faith-based program that's, an 8-step program. There's also Smart Recovery, which has been around for 25 years. It's really gained a lot of momentum in the past 10. Most of people can find those meetings online. It's a different approach because some people are not just really prepared to do the spiritual AA or NA program. Smart Recovery is science driven, and it's also led with CBT therapy. So you find a big difference. Usually the meetings are actually, they're facilitated by a therapist or a therapist in training. So it's a different approach. There's also, sober transport, sober companions for the holiday season. I mean, I know Christmas is here, but even for New Year's, that's another service that Pursuit of Recovery can, provide, is going to those events. I mean, people get so nervous about going to an event and there's alcohol, and what am I going to do when they ask me, do you want to drink? I'm just not drinking. You don't have to give them a long version of how you're working to get sober and you're in recovery. You just have to say, I'm not drinking right now. It's not, productive and conducive to my mental and physical health. I've decided to take a break. That's all you have to say. Also, if you'll see and you'll see them on Instagram and all of social media, is people are coming up with mocktail recipes, right? You don't have to feel like you're out of the loop if you go to a Christmas party. You can just say, hey, I'd like cranberry juice with a splash of 7-Up, Sprite, ginger ale. You don't have to make it such a big deal of the fact that you're not drinking, and also I would definitely, if someone's, overdone it this holiday season, I would definitely encourage self-care. There's IV therapy, there's vitamins. I know that functional wellness, right? Functional health, Katie. And, going by after the holidays and going by to talk to a functional wellness, doctor and saying, hey, listen, I drank too much and I need to work on making me feel better, right? Because if we're feeling crappy physically, what do you think we're doing and feeling emotionally and mentally, right? So it's not just about the drinking. It affects, you're right, it's our mental health. I mean, because that fog on the brain sets in and it affects us.
Yeah, and to your point, right, it's like a domino effect, because like you said, the substance abuse isn't the problem, it's a symptom of the problem, right? That typically is either relationship based or mental health based, lack of coping skills, et cetera, et cetera. And then the overuse creates more mental and emotional distress, right? Like the shame and the guilt. You mentioned the family being mad at people, right? Feelings of, oh, I ruined that holiday, or I don't remember that holiday, right? Or, oh, we ruined my child's memories or my husband's memories or my mother's memories, and all the guilt and shame that sets in, not to mention questioning that stigma around, do I have a problem? So how does one recognize, right? Like, how does one know what's a difference between, like you mentioned, normative drinking or alcohol use, and let's just use alcohol because it's easy to kind of use that one word. But I'm sure this could apply for any substance use, or really any addiction at all, right? I mean, to your point, even process addictions could ramp up at this time of year as a maladaptive coping skill. But what's the difference between normative use versus abuse or addiction?
That's a great question. So, am I abusing substances? Okay. There's some questions that you can ask yourself. How do I get by during the day? Am I running late for work? What is my attitude towards, am I sleeping at night? Okay. That in itself, I mean, addiction affects our sleeping. So what is my mood? How is it affecting my relationships and those around me? How is it affecting my work skills? Is it affecting my friendships? Is it affecting my bank account? That's a huge, I mean, because I'm going to be real honest with you, my drug of choice was cocaine and alcohol. And, when I got paid, I went, instead of paying my bills, I went and got my drugs. Right. So, what does my bank account look like?
Mhm.
Okay. Also, for women and men, what am I doing? What values did I have? Because we all have a core value system, but what values did I have that were affected because of my drug or alcohol abuse this past weekend? Right? Did I attend the company Christmas party and did I get questioned by the boss? It's our relationships, it's the people, places, and things in our life that are not on balance. They're not like this, they're like the roller coaster. And so those questions of, relationships and friendship, family, and work, you're going to see a difference. You're going to see a difference in your financial life, right? I mean, because addiction's progressive if it's untreated. So if any of these things are off balance and it's been like this, you may just want to say, hey, maybe I have a problem, or, maybe I'd like to explore what that looks like. And, that part of that too, I think is something to really understand, is that going to see somebody doesn't mean they're putting you into detox and treatment, right? I mean, that's a big fear for people. Admitting or even thinking maybe I have a problem, there's a big fear of being locked down, and that's just not the case anymore. You can be, do I have a problem? And, figure it out with someone qualified to be able to help you figure it out. I mean, and it's not about locking them down. It's about meeting, especially when I work with people, meet them right where they're at and let them ask themselves the questions. And I do that. I'm like, did it affect what relationships are affected by your drinking or drug use? What relationships, work, family, kids? What's your bank account look like?
Mhm.
I like that broad definition because, I think we have somehow been told the story that you have to have this like severe crisis moment to recognize, right? Right. This idea of rock bottom and what that is. And I know a lot of people in recovery that didn't hit what we would traditionally know as rock bottom, right? There was an awareness before they completely, you know, drove themselves into a wall that like this is causing chaos, right? And it's repairable chaos for right now. But kind of that point of like I'm not upholding my values, like I'm doing things I didn't think I would do or saying things I didn't think I would say, and my relationships are strained. And I know a lot of times in my work with people, there's a questioning of it, right? But it's not bad enough yet. But what does that mean, right? This idea of like a functioning addict, right? Like they didn't lose their job. They didn't, right? Like they're still married. Their kids are maybe somewhat still in the dark, although I would argue maybe they notice more than one would think, right? But this idea that like, well, I'm still holding it all together, so it can't be a problem.
Yeah, that I find that. So when I work with families and the process of intervention, which brings up what you're talking about is an emotional bottom. So
yeah,
interventions, when I work with families, you think of two mountain tops, right? Here's a mountain and here's a mountain. And this is the family, and they are very concerned about their loved one, right? And saying, listen, this is what I'm noticing. And they bring it very lovingly and compassionately, like the husband says, I think you're drinking too much, or this is a problem, or your boss comes to you and makes a point, or you even, like you said, you're finding out relationships are just suffering. So this is a family self-intervention. Over here, this mountaintop is society's interventions, and society's intervention is jails, prisons, institutions, and death. So there's society's intervention is coming. If you're in active addiction, it's coming. Maybe not in the timing that you would think, but it's coming. So your self-reflected intervention comes with meeting with a therapist. Your self-reflected intervention comes with a family. Well, down in the valley is what I call the emotional bottom. And that's where I want people to hit, because when you experience an emotional bottom, change is more valuable, okay, than that physical bottom. Because that physical bottom is jails, institutions, prisons, unfortunately, death. It's job loss, it's family loss. So that emotional bottom is where the thinking can really happen. That's where the magic happens, when someone hits an emotional bottom. You're right, they don't have to hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
Because rock bottom is bad. So you want them to hit that emotional bottom. That's why the questions are asked, and it's with love and compassion, and they call it sober curious. I mean, if you're curious, if you have a problem, you probably do.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you probably do.
So we are in the holiday time, and it is a challenge. And I know, in working with people in recovery and friends in recovery, there is so much normalized, maybe even glorified substance use in our society, right? Like, events have, substances tied to them, holidays, like any celebration. You know, I think for everyone new in recovery, there is a discomfort of getting over that hump, right? Of being the person at the holiday party, at the, office party, who's not drinking, right? And everyone may be noticing that first time, because this is new, especially if you were the one who maybe took it too far in recent years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember times I didn't drink, right? For women, this year's a lot, like, you just don't feel like drinking, or you're not in the mood. And it's like, are you pregnant? No, I'm just choosing not to in this moment. Like, right? What are some strategies to kind of support people through, especially that like awkward first step, right? Of arming yourself with some tool to use in that moment.
Yeah. So first and foremost, you don't have to go to the party if you have got that much anxiety. Okay. You don't. Okay. But if it's something that you have to do, then like I was sharing before, there's meetings. There's meetings in everyone's area. There's AA, there's NA. There's also a movement that I'm part of, She Recovers. Okay. And it's for women and women only. They have a Facebook page. We have like Christmas Eve all the way through Christmas Day. There's support group Zoom meetings throughout the day. And She Recovers is a nonprofit foundation. And it's amazing. It's led by a mother and daughter team, but they are all about supporting women. And it's not about just the alcohol and the drugs. It's about trauma, it's about behavior change, etc. But there's a lot of movements besides that one that you can find online. You can Google women's support groups during the holidays, right? And it will come up. It's also, reaching out and finding a recovery coach, having that lifeline of saying, hey, what do I do? It's about, taking a friend. Can I take a friend to my, office Christmas party? Can I bring my spouse? Obviously, your spouse knows that, you've made a decision not to drink. So if that spouse can be part of your safety net, I never tell, people who are trying to get or working on their own recovery, we don't lean on our family as our only safety net, right? We bring in our good friends, we find sponsors at meetings, we talk to recovery coaches, but, have that safety net in place. And also you don't have to stay the whole time at the party. If it's a mandatory that you go, you can make an appearance, you can, ask for that mocktail and mingle and leave. You don't have to feel like, that because anxiety comes from getting sober, right? Because we emotionally numb. Like, I had a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. I am a true introvert, which some people are like, what? But I am, I do better in small groups, So when I first got sober, it was hard. My anxiety was out the roof. And so there's a lot of times I didn't go to functions, right? I just went to a meeting or so there's a lot of, I don't want people to feel like, oh my God, I got to go to this. No, you really don't. You can say no, but if you have to go, take a friend, take a loved one that knows you're in recovery, get to a meeting before, go to a meeting after, there's just a lot of support out there.
And when you talk about families and kind of, I sometimes hear a lot from the other side where I work with clients who are concerned about their partner's substance use. And they really struggle with how to lovingly address it because, there can be a defensiveness, right? Or, I mean, nobody wants to hear hear that they have a problem. So, what are your recommendations on family members and how to navigate addressing someone's substance use that they may feel is concerning or
And
going
can
too
I
far?
I want to add one other piece to that too, because I was thinking of the same thing and wondering also kind of, you know, again, I feel like 'tis the season, right? And feel like, you know, again, most of my clients are mental health clients, not substance abuse. Amy, I send them to you more than often than not. And so I hear sometimes people who struggle with their own experience, but more often people struggling with that of others. And wondering this question of, okay, so again, what is normative? What is like, ooh, we're partying here, right? And we're gonna maybe indulge a bit more, right? In the same way you might say, I'm gonna have a cookie where normally I don't eat cookies, right? Or I'm gonna have a glass of champagne, or I'm gonna have another glass of wine because it is Christmas Eve or because it's this party, right? And how much of that is like, ooh, this is kind of fun. I get to indulge because I'm celebrating. It is the season. And how much as we go into these family functions or, even functions where we're not as connected or in any way responsible, but just noticing others' behaviors, right? Like you said, work functions, friend, social functions, right? When does it look like, okay, this is probably like beyond, right? Where we would think I'm concerned about someone.
Hmm. That's a great question. I mean, when families call me and they say, "Oh my God, I think my loved one has a problem," and we want to address it. Okay, what have you done? Nothing.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's start from square one. Families have, like you shared, the word maladaptive. We have maladaptive coping skills because we are walking on eggshells more times than not around our loved one. And we're so fearful, you know, of our own rejection from that loved one. First of all, you can't love your loved one sober. Second of all, you didn't cause them to continue to emotionally numb. You may have been part of a problem that instigated, wanting to numb, but you did not in general cause it. Third of all, you can't cure it. We can't love someone sober, we can't cure it. And believe it or not, the cause you may have been part of the cause, but you're not the true reason. And so, the one thing that families do have is control over their communication with their loved one. And that's where you bring in a professional. When you have tried to have that conversation with your loved one and you have tried, you've been walking on eggshells, what happens is you become into, basically codependent behavior with your loved one. You're walking on eggshells with your loved one. And you're also enabling them. You are denying them the dignity to figure it out. And you're enabling your loved one, and not saying anything is enabling. You're enabling is disabling your loved one to get sober and healthy because you're unwilling to do the work. Families either hate me or they love me because I am no nonsense when I work with families and we sit down at the table. I'm like, what are you doing for your loved one? If I'm talking to parents that have the 35-year-old living in their basement, not working, playing video games all day and ordering Grubhub or Uber Eats on their credit card, there's a problem. If I'm working with a husband who, whether they have children that are small or grown, okay, and he's out buying the wine so he has peace in the house for his wife who passes out and he's working all day and then has to pick up all the pieces with the kids and everything else. I mean, he's working 48 hours in a 24-hour spin. There's a problem. Same flip on the wife's side, right? I mean, we as human beings it seems like we are so fearful of talking about the truth. And a lot of times we're fearful of talking about the truth with our loved ones because, you know what? We have a behavior pattern with that person of codependency, meaning they, if I'm fearful of talking to somebody about their drinking or drugging, I have a role in their life in some form or fashion that I'm needed in their life, right? Because if I'm not speaking about their alcoholism or their drug addiction, I'm fearful. There is a fear in me. Now, where does that fear come from? That's what you have to look at, right? That's why family systems is so important in recovery, because I want families to not be part of the problem. I want them to be part of the solution. And the first step is admitting I'm powerless over my loved one, but I want to get my loved one help. So what do I do? So, that's why Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, PALS, NAMI, Families Anonymous, Smart Recovery has a component. There's just, I can't tell you enough how many resources are out there besides, a therapist working. Is you have to identify, first thing is, what is my role in my loved one's life? And why am I fearful of having that conversation? And that is the first question you have to ask yourself. Of why the hell are you walking on eggshells around your husband or wife, right? There comes, like you said, there's maladaptive coping skills. So you have to say, okay, what is my role? And why am I fearful of my role in their life being taken away? Because I need to be needed. Especially wives of alcoholic husbands. What happened when they were younger? What was their childhood like, right? Did they grow up with an alcoholic father? Did they grow up with a mother who swept everything under the rug, right? I mean, I tell people, take all the rugs out of your house. We're only as sick as our secrets, and there's secrets that are surrounding this addiction. And families are so scared. And my job is to come in and help them to be unscared.
Yeah. And I think that's the challenge, right? There's so much like shame and blame from the family's perspective, from the person who might be struggling. I think there's a need to move through that, right? And just accept that may be your experience, but there's, you can move through it. And I think people do. And that's why, the friends I have that are in recovery, the clients I have are so proud, right? Like, it's like they will tell anyone because they've moved through feeling embarrassed and they moved through shame and guilt, right? And kind of came out on the other side and now really wear it with pride. Like, and it, have no embarrassment about saying, this is my story, right? This is where I was and this is where I am now. The shame, the guilt, the embarrassment of the things they may have done during that time, or even just having the struggle, really does melt away during the recovery process. And I think it's kind of that self-exploration. But I always want people to know, like, you won't feel that discomfort forever, right? Like,
yeah,
you kind of move through it and reconcile all those feelings. And, I think it's hard for people to see the other side when they're
because
in it, but which is why some of these, like AA and all these like recovery groups are great, because you get the mix of people in different phases, right? You get the person who's there for their first meeting and terrified, and you've got the person who's, been sober for 30 years all in one place. So you get to see that journey, right? You can see the glimpses of the different stages. But I do think it's so important to highlight that, like, while those feelings are very valid, they are not where you will always sit, right? That you move through that.
Yeah, and we're a society of instant gratification. We want everything yesterday.
Yeah.
And what we have to realize with addiction is none of us got here overnight, and none of us are going to be right overnight. It's a process. It's about progress, never perfectionism, right? And we want everything yesterday. And it's a process. Rome wasn't built in a day. We didn't become addicts and alcoholics in a day. We did not become codependent family members in a day. And so we have to just give your grace. That's the word. We have to give ourselves grace and realize it's a process, and it's not even one day at a time. It's sometimes 15 minutes at a time.
Right. Yeah. And this idea that, there's more to our journey than this one moment, right? There's a reason we didn't have the coping skills, or we coped this way, or we partnered with someone, who was struggling in this way. And it's not it doesn't come from a blaming standpoint, right? But more of an understanding. I now understand why I made certain choices. And now with that understanding, I can implement tools, implement skills, make different choices, right? It's more about growth, not about making someone feel bad that they got there, right? Just really understanding. I mean, this is true for therapy in general, right? This understanding how we work, why we tick, why we have certain triggers, why we cope a certain way or don't cope another way, or, you know, how we relate to people, and really deep diving into that so that going forward, you can see the whole picture and make decisions that better fit who you are and who you want to be and where you want to go.
So I have a
Absolutely.
question, Amy. You know, I know, and Claudia, I'd be curious to hear if this feels different for you, but in Florida here, medicinal marijuana use is now legal and has been for some time.
Mhm.
And in our area, at least, it feels to me as a mental health clinician that more of my clients than not now have their marijuana card. I might even hazard to say 85 to 90%. And it's always interesting to me how that unfolds in sessions. Some come right out first session, you know, when I ask about like on the intake paperwork, right? What vitamins and medicines and supplements are you taking, right? Some people are very open and say like, oh, I have my medicinal marijuana card and I use it this way, fill in the blank, right? And then for others, it's very slow, kind of unfolding, almost like they test the waters to see if how I might respond or if we can build that trust bond. Because I think there is still a little bit of a stigma. But the other thing that I'm seeing, which is really interesting to me, is that I'm seeing a trend where people are glorifying the use of marijuana as a substitution for alcohol use. Whereas someone might come home from the office and have a cocktail at the end of the day. Now it is, I'm going to come home and there's many forms this takes, right? But more often what I hear is either smoke marijuana or use Amy, tell me, it's like a pen with a cartridge.
And the dab, yeah, there's dabs. There's a vape pen that has the, you know, it has the THC and the CBD. It's there's also the gummies.
And
Yeah.
if it's a surprise for people, and I'm just curious around that, right? Around, you know, is there anything that concerns you about that? Does that feel like a good shift in our society to you? Because you know, I we're all kind of around the same age ish, and you know, when I grew up, it wasn't this way, right? It was very much like, um, you know, smoking pot's bad, right? Was how I was raised, and now it feels very different, very normative, and again, almost even celebrated as, you know, for the benefits, and the benefits both in contrast to the risk, which seems to be completely overlooked in a way that it was not when I was growing up, and benefits as compared to choosing a different form of substance, right? Amy, what are your thoughts and experience with that?
So these are my thoughts, you know, and so I would much rather a client be using marijuana than alcohol. Alcohol and the physical effects are so much far worse, right? And, you know, when working with somebody, I meet them where they're at, right? I don't try to take away everything. I'd rather someone be smoking marijuana and taking gummies and having a vape pen with their medical marijuana card than shooting dope, than drinking alcohol, you know, than overdosing on street pills that they're purchasing because they can't get their pain medication. You know, I've worked with people that are on pain, they are on, you know, the treatment where they were taking the pain pills, they were buying them off the streets, and their doctor worked with them, you know, as a medical professional and said, let's try marijuana. Do I agree with it? Am I just like, I'm knocking it all out 100%? I can't, because, you know, when I work with people and I see that they're now no longer buying Percocets, most, you know, buying them off the streets with the risk of overdosing because they're laced with fentanyl, or they're not blackout drinking any longer, I have to see that as an improvement. Do I want to, see them be off the marijuana eventually? Oh my God, yes. But I also know that they were on far worse, so they're making these strides. They're not babies. I mean, they've made strides, right? They've made strides from the alcohol and from the pills that they're buying off the streets to marijuana. Again, do I agree with it? Not really. But I also know that they've made improvements, and hopefully and prayerfully, working on the things that need to be worked on professionally, emotionally, and mentally, they'll get to the point where they don't need that either. But, that, I don't know if that helps. I don't know. Probably people disagree with me, but that's my thoughts on it.
Well, and it's a very controversial topic, and I love that you're able and willing to share your opinion, right? Because at the end of the day, we get to do that, right, as clinicians. Claudia, do you see this in Georgia as much as we see this here in
So
Florida?
we do not have medicinal marijuana. No, but I lived in Florida. I have friends in Florida. So I know how many people are card carrying. And I know, yeah. So we don't have medicinal marijuana. I think the city of Atlanta and some of the surrounding cities have decriminalized marijuana. So still illegal, but if you get caught with it, not a problem. So it's interesting because everywhere I go, I smell it and I'm like, God, like what happened? And then I realized it was decriminalized. So we don't necessarily have that. I do think, like I say, I smell it in a lot of areas. Like I'll be driving and I smell it in my car. I don't know where it's coming from, someone's car, right? So there's definitely been an uptick of it. I don't know. I think we medicate in a lot of different ways. And part of me wonders, is the medical marijuana any different than going to a psychiatrist and getting that cocktail?
Right.
And, and not that psychiatry doesn't have a benefit, but people can seek pills from their psychiatrist too that they may or may not actually need, or from their medical doctor that they may or may not actually need, right? You can, people have gone to the doctor and like, I'm a little nervous. Oh, let me just write you some Lexapro. Let me just give you this. Let me give you that. It's, and they're not necessarily trained in mental health, right? There's like your general practitioner who's like, well, I know something that can work. I don't know if the medical marijuana is that different from that, from pill seeking in different ways. And now you can break down like, are these, psychopharmaceuticals habit forming, right? What do they do to our body chemistry and our ability to produce certain hormones naturally? I don't know, right? We can go in the science of that. So I don't know if it's that different, because masking symptoms is masking symptoms, and whether you do it legally, illegally, right? Like it still potentially could be problematic, right? People go to their medical practitioners to pill seek all the time. They're getting it legally.
Yeah.
Maybe they've got 10 different doctors they're working with, right? But so I don't know. I'm kind of on board too, right? If there's progress being made and it's not impacting your life in the same detrimental way it may have been before, then maybe that is a step forward. I just don't think it's so black and white, so cut and dry. And I think the process of sobriety, it's not always linear.
You're right.
You can replace one addiction for another, right? So maybe I stopped drinking, but now I'm shopping, or, using sex, or, we can kind of dive into all the forms of addiction. I think most people would say, well, at least, your shopping addiction isn't hurting your health, right? Might be hurting my bank account, but there's all kinds of ways we find to soothe that are maladaptive. And I think it's not uncommon to replace one with another that might be less harmful, right? And hopefully kind of then we work through that. I think the key is to do the work to figure out what's underneath it all, and what's driving our need for this.
Well, and you bring up a good point that maybe depending on what the primary focus is, right, the answer might be different. If the primary focus is physiological, right, Amy, you said, well, marijuana has a lot less detrimental effects on the body than excessive alcohol use, right? So thumbs up to that, or versus if it is like okay, well, the goal is to be able to self-soothe or to cope without substances at all, or maybe to be sober, quote unquote, right? Then we might be looking in a different direction. And so I love that. And that, again, Claudia and I always say we didn't solve the problem, but like there's no one size fits all for everybody, and different people are going to have different goals for their lives. And I think that's kind of one of the beautiful things, Amy, that I heard you say about or speak to a moment ago is like, okay, just because you begin this exploration doesn't mean you're going to get carted off in padded handcuffs to some place that's going to strip you down and make you, get sober, right? That this could be a process and a collaborative process with a supportive professional, or to your point, starting with supportive loved ones. Ideally, we could find loved ones, whether it's friends or family, who might be on a similar same journey of personal growth and healing, right? Because we kind of always want to try to reach up rather than down to normalize our behavior and try to be our best selves, right? And then finding a path that feels like it fits for each individual person. What's going to be the right solution for you?
Yeah. And I will say this for any, because I know your listeners, I'm not condoning marijuana use, but I'm not disowning it either. I mean, I want to be in front of people who are wanting to get the help they deserve, not about needing it. It's everyone deserves the opportunity to experience recovery. And like I said, my prayer is that they won't need anything, right? But meeting them where they're at, I think, gives them the more incentive to say, okay, let me entertain and talk to someone. Yeah. Right? So I don't condone it, but I can't disown it.
I love it. All right, Amy, what parting thoughts or words or advice that you might offer? And Claudia, did I just interrupt you?
No, go ahead. No, I'm good.
Okay. Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, so you asked, okay, so it's holidays. Yeah, I mean, it's the holiday season. I would definitely encourage you. There is the power of prayer. Everybody prayerfully has a God of their own understanding, a higher power. It seems to bring peace and serenity, believe it or not. I mean, the serenity prayer is a great peace. There's meetings, there's my web, you can definitely, I'm available if you're, struggling. There's also, you'll see on what AA has a website, NA has a website. She Recovers, like I said, they have a Facebook group. You can go on there, you can request to be in the page. You can listen to other women, who need support. And if you're looking for that support to make it through the holidays, there's the dialect of, I'm not drinking. And then don't explain yourself. You don't have to, there's mocktails. There's setting boundaries around what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. People, places, and things, none of those are worth the risk of relapse.
Yeah.
Love that.
None of them.
Well, thank you, Amy. That was great. Yeah. I think we could talk about this for a lot longer because I have a lot of thoughts swirling, but no one wants like a 10-hour podcast.
Amy, where can people find you if they want to follow you?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Pursuit of Recuv, at Pursuit of Recuv. I am on LinkedIn, Amy Cooper, Pursuit of Recovery. I'm on Facebook. I have a page, Pursuit of Recovery. You can also find me on Rob and Katie's website, and then pursuitofrecovery.com. So thank you. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to be with you girls. Thanks. I do. It's exciting.
Yes, thank you so much for being on. I always love having guests because it just brings such a richness and different perspectives and different wisdom. So I'm so happy you could come with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. And I wish you all happy holidays.
Thank you. You too.
Yay.
Listening again, you can find Claudia online, Instagram and Facebook at Mighty Oak Parenting. And I am half of Rob and Katie Truax, also on Facebook and Instagram. Amy's more advanced with her social media, I think, than we are, but we are not on TikTok, either of us. But working to stay cool. So all right. Thanks for listening, everybody. And hopefully we'll have you back listening again next time.
Yep,
All
bye.
right. Bye.